Well, my name is Arthur Franck. I'm from Helsinki. I'm a documentarian. I've been doing this for 20 years now, soon, this work. And this is my third feature film, The Helsinki Effect. It's about diplomacy and building agreements and cooperation in the Cold War era. But it's kind of a comedic touch of how I tried to find out what it was actually about, this conference for security and cooperation in Europe, which then had its kind of main moment was the final signing of the agreement in Helsinki in 1975. So I tried to find out what this conference is about and what it actually then later turned out to, what the consequences were of this conference. Well, I was fascinated about the footage. I wanted to make a film without having to film one single day. I was like completely tired of going around with cameras and wanted to try to make a pure archival film. And then I was looking for subjects that would kind of relate to Finland, but also maybe have an international dimension and not just be specific to Finnish audiences. And then kind of this conference, which was a really big part of Finnish Cold War history, was just sitting there waiting for somebody to make a film about it. So I was just like, well, let's try. Yeah. I didn't love the story or didn't love the subject in any particular way, but I thought there might be something here. And what turned out was that I found, to me at least, a very amusing, but also kind of a beautiful story about diplomacy. So I jumped headfirst into it, and now the end result is what's on screen. Yeah. Well, maybe I think the core message in the end, that the core kind of conclusion I came to is that boring and slow diplomacy is what changes the world, or at least has the potential to change the world. Quick solutions, big egos trying to make quick deals, without bringing everybody into that decision process, those will never be sustainable, and those will always be kind of the source of more trouble. But if you can create a very broad coalition and bring everybody in and make a compromise that everybody then in the end can say, okay, we are signing this agreement, then maybe something can come out of it, maybe unexpected positive things, and that's what happened with the Helsinki Agreement for sure.
For decision making.
Yes, yes, and I think it's not just for the politicians and leaders to remember, but also for the people to empower our leaders to make these kinds of efforts to really do the really deep work and commit to these processes, and also to maybe for us to empower our diplomats and the kind of civil servants that do this work all the time throughout Europe, who are working on diplomacy, and maybe for us to remember them and to kind of value their work, because it's really that work that can keep the worst outcomes maybe away from humanity. As a young, maybe naive and cocky filmmaker, I decided never to use my voice in my own films. And then it was very liberating then to maybe at this middle-aged stage to be like, well, I can skip that rule and just, do the opposite and actually include myself very much. And it was maybe for this story very much needed, because the footage couldn't, and all the protocols and the texts that I found that would tell this story, they couldn't alone describe all the context. So I felt I needed some glue to piece together all the bits. The other thing was maybe to bring in this element of a subjective storyteller, a character that is a version of me, that maybe with a sense of humor looks back at this thing and tries to show the audience, maybe how my path was through this material, and maybe make it more approachable that way. So it filled many roles in a way, this narration. Well, to me, filmmaking has always been a way to stay playful, have a childlike outlook on life, because it is very, to me, it's very gratifying to use material and voices and videos as a it's like a sandbox where you can play around. It doesn't always have to be so serious. And maybe this was, maybe I felt now self-assured in my career that I could take also a risk of bringing myself in there and even add to that playfulness. Using humor in a very, in these kinds of quite serious subjects, it was a risk. I knew if it goes wrong, then it might put people off, you know. And not not make it even approachable. It might backfire, but we decided we would go ahead with it and then just see where it takes us. So it wasn't. It was for sure a way to maybe make it also more approachable, this story, for younger generations. That's maybe how. I mean, I have kids who are teenagers, and so like how can we think of history in a way that doesn't just, you know, check the boxes of traditional history documentary, you know, filmmaking. So trying to, you know, make a new way, and maybe that could interest a wider audiences. I don't know. At least it's a new perspective on history telling, and I always like it when I see a film that has a new, unexpected approach to subjects. So this was my attempt at doing that. Well, most of the footage is from the Finnish broadcasting company, YLE, their archives, because they kind of documented everything regarding to the conference very meticulously. So it was pretty easy to look at that. Then, of course, there was some international sources as well that we kind of complemented the whole tapestry with. But it was pretty straightforward to look at the majority of the footage in Helsinki. The selection process, because I also read a lot of books and I found these transcripts and I wanted to put them in, and so it was always okay, what do we have interesting scenes that come from the footage? Okay, this is interesting. For instance, Brezhnev behaving very comedically when he's talking to the press and shaking his hands and you know, seeming like a real great entertainer. Okay, so we would have to make a scene about that. So that's the footage telling us something. Sometimes we had a transcript where we can see him and Henry Kissinger talking about something, and this is interesting or funny. So then we make a scene about that. So it came from different directions, the impulses to what's included in the story. We didn't actually, in the end, do a lot of scenes that we ended up cutting, because we kind of worked in the way that we started investing time and resources into scenes that we from the beginning felt spoke to us. And then we used the narration and the structure to glue them together. Mm-hmm. So it's very hard to say why the film turned out the way it did, but it just feels like it was the only way. You know, the story kept telling us where to go, and we just followed. It was a lot of intuition. So we found these transcripts, where we could like read like in a movie script, you know, what Kissinger is saying, and then how Brezhnev is commenting, maybe with some comedic tone or even being angry or something. And I just felt like this was like reading parts of, I don't know if you've seen Death of Stalin, but like this kind of how absurd these discussions can be behind the scenes, and also how these are actually people. So they use humor to try to find common ground. They argue back and forth, but very, you know, quite, you know, they're very polite. And so bringing all these elements into the film just with the texts that were the transcribed discussions would have been very boring. To just have statics, you know, static graphics, you know, Kissinger says this, Brezhnev and Ford says that. So, okay, that would be not the way to go. Then the other choice would have been to use maybe voice actors, but I didn't feel like that would work, because these are very known people. They're imitating their voices or interpreting them could be maybe problematic. And then these AI tools started to pop up on the market, where actually cloning somebody's voice and then having them say something became technically possible for very low, you know, cost. So it just kind of was a coincidence that these technological advancements made things possible. And there's a lot of ethical questions regarding AI in documentaries, but here I felt as long as I make the audience aware of what I'm doing, then we can listen to this cloned Kissinger voice and still enjoy it. Because all the things of substance that I made these characters say in the film are based either in transcripts or in books or things they said to somebody in some context or wrote down. So I felt I trusted my own morality in terms of how I could use them. And I felt it was a pretty interesting documentarian cinematic tool to bring these voices alive in this way. I don't know if it will work for every instance, and AI in documentary is kind of a hot potato. So it always depends on the context to me. But here we felt strongly that it works, and it's been validated pretty well now that it works, but it might not work for everybody. So I am open to that kind of conflict, discussion. It's an important discussion to have.
So you decide individually whether you use it or not. So you're open for the future as well.
I am open for most anything. I think it would be kind of arrogant to say now, sitting here in 2025, what tools are we allowed to use in the future or now, because these discussions are like an ongoing dialogue between the audiences and the artists. And it's always, I mean, there was discussions when the camera first was invented, like people were saying, no, it's only paintings and the camera is not an artistic tool. And then later on, moving images, they are not. So like animations in documentary or recreations have also been like the hot topics at some point. And then we collectively kind of think about these things, and then we evolve and go past these maybe somewhat arbitrary restrictions. So we have to be open for that evolving to happen with AI as well.